This is the second of our After Effects animation tutorials, and in this tutorial we're going to be looking at text and 3D text. So I'm going to start from After Effects. I have a project that I've just opened up, and I'm going to save this project as now I'll go to somewhere like my desktop, make a folder called 3D text, and in there I'll save the project as 3D text. Now the first thing I'm going to do is make a composition. I can do it by creating the new composition here or from the menu. It takes me to the same dialog box. It's the composition settings. I'm going to call my composition 3D text. The resolution I'm going to use is the HD TV 720 30 frames a second, 29.97 if we want to be exact. If you have an older or slower machine, use a lower resolution, even down to the web video. But for me, this is enough. Background color, I'm going to make it anything except black. I'm choosing a sort of a neutral greeny gray here, and that's fine. Everything else I'm leaving as default. So I now have a composition with nothing on it, no layers. So I'm going to create a layer for my composition. I can either use the right click, and this gives me the choices of the types of layers, or under layer new, this gives me the same choices. I'm going to use the text layer. Just incidentally, shape layer was the one that we used last week for our octopus exercise. This week it's a text layer. So that actually gives me a cursor there in the middle of my screen, and I can type my name, for example. I should now have the character window available to me if I've got a text object selected, so I can choose the font that I want, something nice, and this one's nice and bold. I'm going to use that. We can also take it up in size a bit. I'm just going to take it up to about that size. The color of the text is currently white, and for mine I've got enough contrast between my lettering and the background, so I'm just going to leave it white. Okay, that gives me a name. Now we know we can move this name around by just moving it on the y-axis, on the x-axis. We're going to turn it into a 3D object, and we do that by looking along the layer, and one of the switches that we have for the layer is the 3D switch. So I'm just clicking into the 3D switch, and we'll see a couple of interesting things happen. We immediately have a green, a red, and a blue arrow to represent the Y, the X, and the Z-axis. I can still move my shape around, and that's moving it on the Y-axis and the X-axis, but I've also got this Z-axis, and I can move it. It seems to be scaling it, but it's actually moving it forwards and backwards. Let's just have a look at that with the rotation tool. If I use the rotation tool and rotate it around the X-axis, it rotates around the X-axis like this. If I rotate it around the Y-axis, it rotates like this. And if I rotate it around the Z-axis, it rotates like this. So these are the axes that I now have. It's operating in 3D space. The other thing that you can notice is that we now have not just an X and Y, but also a Z in the position and the scale and the orientation. Without that, it's back to X and Y locations. So Z is now a reality. So let's start animating in 3D. I'm going to start by leaning the name over, and that was with the rotation tool. And I'm just going to drag him down to the sort of the bottom of the screen, and I'm going to grab the y-axis, which is now green, and drag him back towards the horizon. So that's my starting point, and I'm going to put a keyframe. I'm on frame 1, and I'm going to put a keyframe there, and on the, say, the 2-second mark, I'm going to grab the y-axis again and drag him to the front of the stage. So we've now got animation happening along the y-axis. I can still animate using the other properties that we know about, such as I can put motion blur on so that the name is blurred when it moves. I quite like using easing, so I can also put easy ease on both these keyframes. And that's given us a nice acceleration up to speed, and then slows down into the second keyframe. I'm also going to animate the opacity by clicking on opacity, putting a keyframe on the first frame, and taking the opacity down to 0 or maybe 10% at the end. So my animation now looks like this. It's actually happening a bit slow for me, for my taste, so I'm going to make it happen in 1 frame instead of 1 second instead of 2 seconds. And there it is. So I'm going to now duplicate this text layer to make and offset it to make a, say, 3, so that it animates 3 times. Before I do that, I'm going to just zoom out and shorten my text layer to 2 seconds. So there it is, 1 second, 2 seconds, and that's all I need. With the layer highlighted, and I can close up all the properties now so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to Command C and Command V to paste a second copy of that layer, and then I'll just offset it by a few frames. So there's the second layer is following. Let me go a bit closer so I can see exactly how many frames that was. Let's put it 5 frames behind, and in fact I'll make a third one. Copy and paste, and the third one I'll also put 5 frames behind. So now we see our animation of 3 frames. So easy to do. The last thing I want to do with this composition is I'd like to have the name explode once it gets to this final position. So I'm going to create an explosion with a new layer, and this will be a shape layer. And in my shape layer, I'm going to draw a shape for my explosion. So this is a real sort of cartoony kind of explosion shape. And the 0 tells me that the shape is now complete, and that's fine. That's the shape that I want to see. I'm just going to make sure that it starts about where I want it to start, so sort of happens about here, and probably should go for we don't want it too long, so I'm looking at maybe a second, and in fact it probably, the explosion only needs to really go for about 5 frames. So I'll just open up this layer and do a scale transform from the very first frame where this one appears, scale, and let's say over, let's try 5 frames. Over 5 frames it will increase in size. Let's just take the scale up. Now I've lost sight of it here, so I'm actually going to create a position keyframe here as well, so that I can drag this one back to here somewhere. So bam, there we've got our explosion. Now explosions always become more transparent as they explode. So we'll start off with 100% transparency and take it down to 20% by the last frame. And the other thing we'll do with this one is similar to before. Let's make a copy of this layer. Command copy, command paste, and just offset that by a few frames. Let's have a quick look at that. And let's shorten these as well, so the whole thing lasts about 15 frames. Actually, it needs to be less. Bam. And after that we don't need to see any names, so they can be ended there. So the whole animation goes for about 2 seconds. Okay, I'm just going to add a sound effect to my animation. I've got an explosion here. I'm going to drop that explosion right into the point where my explosion happens, about here. It goes on for quite a while, but let's just have a look at what that happens. So I hit the RAM preview, and I'm totally happy with that. So I'm just going to shorten my whole movie down to 4 seconds total. One more time to check it. Yeah, that's awesome. So now, just to complete, I will add it to the render queue. Make sure that it's saving to my 3D text folder, and I'll call it 3D text 1. This will be the final render, first one. And now it's in the render queue. I can render it, and it doesn't take too long. And just to check it, let's just jump out of After Effects for a moment and check the MOV file. So here it is now in the QuickTime player, looking fine. So back in After Effects, I want you to open up a file which you can get from BBLearn called Don't Eat the Car. Now this uses a soundtrack from a classic film.
Oh, no, you're eating the car! Don't eat the car! Not the car! I don't understand a word I'm saying. Oh, no, you're eating the car! Don't eat the car! Not the car! I don't understand a word I'm saying.
So what you can see here is that the soundtrack has been analyzed for you, and each word is on a separate layer for this. What we're going to do here is what's called kinetic text, moving text. So your job is to start with this file and animate the text in a way that you feel works well with the audio. Here's some ideas to of the sort of thing I'm looking for. So
Oh, no, you're eating the car! Don't eat the car! Not the car! I don't understand a word I'm saying. Oh, no, you're eating the car! Don't eat the car! Not the car! I don't understand a word I'm saying. Oh, no.
So you get the idea. Using what we've done so far in the in this tutorial, you should be able to take this start file and do something really interesting with it by animating the text using 3D. That's it for this tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see what you produce.